Well, hello. Mr. Tony, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well, man. You know, it was a good week. Now it's the weekend, and I'm looking forward to it. Even though I'm kind of working all weekend, so
Everybody's waiting for the weekend because in 18XX land, that's usually when our games get played. Let's be honest, right?
I'm gonna play 1822 MX online first thing in the morning.
Nice,
and then, like I say, work. So.
Fair enough. But we did not work last weekend. You and I actually got to play a game, didn't we?
We did.
Online. We did. We got to play the alpha version of 18RoyalGorge with the designer, and lo and behold, I mean, you guys saw the title. You've seen the podcast name. You know this is going to be about that specific game, right?
Let's hope they do.
Well, I mean, I think the bigger hope is that the designers actually showed up. So why don't we flip the camera and why don't we see if they're here, and we can maybe get into the game and talk about it, because it was fun, it was tight, and I think there's some good stuff to discuss. So
yeah, sure.
Without further ado, let's bring them in. We don't get them out of the green room, right? All right, so there you are. Hello. So this is Denman and Kayla, and they are the designers of 18RoyalGorge. So why don't you guys just introduce yourselves, tell us a quick tidbit about you, and tell everybody what's going on.
So my name's Denman Schofield, one of the co-designers of 18RoyalGorge, and I've been gaming for maybe 8 years or so. Got heavy into 18XX several years back, and it's actually her fault, actually, that I'm into board games in general. So she can tell you that.
Yeah, I'm Kayla Ross. I've been board gaming for probably 10 to 12 years.
Nice.
Just got into 18XX, which is his fault, about 3 years ago.
Okay.
But he was pretty curmudgeon and didn't want to play board games. And now you see behind us his collection. So I think he dove pretty hard into it.
I was such a hater about board games. I was like, yeah, that's stupid. I'm not playing games. And then I bought like one game, and I was like, that's it. I'm just only going to have like a couple small box games. And now we're sitting in a room filled with games. So
that's awesome. I will say, I have seen a lot of collections in my time. I've seen a lot of videos. I've been in a lot of houses. You're the first person I've ever seen put your games on that angle, and I love it. It looks great on your shelves. And I see some some really good ones up there too on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a little different when we moved in here, and it makes you look like it's full. We don't want him to think he has more room to put more games in here. So
yeah.
As somebody who just got rid of about 300 games, I get that totally.
Yeah.
So, Kayla, you said you've been at this for quite some time. What kind of games did you play before you came into the 18XX land?
A little bit of everything. I think the game that really got me into the hobby, though, was Betrayal at House on the Hill. I really like horror themed games. That's
okay, cool.
Something I like. I want to love them all. I don't love them all, really. I like the way they look. I like horror things. Always have been into the Halloween and things like that. So that was really, I think, the game that got me into it, and it just kind of went downhill from there. I'm pretty open to play anything and everything. Mm-hmm. Up until a few years ago, I'd say I played a lot more light games just because of the people I was playing with. So sure. A lot of deck builders and things like that. But I think that's really kind of where I dove in.
Fair enough. Awesome. So if you had to pick a game or two that you would say is your favorite in the 18XX genre, what would you say for each of you kind of is in that wheelhouse? So we'll start with you this time, Edmund.
So my favorites, I would say 18MS. So this is like controversial opinion. A lot of people knock on 18MS. I feel like it doesn't get as much love as it should. I love the fact that that game has a set timeline of like, this is how many rounds we're going to play. And I won't spoil it now, but like a few things in Gorge do have some influence from MS, especially the train roster, which we can talk about in a bit. But I also I really like 18 Mechs, and I like 18 Korea a lot.
All right. Awesome.
I really like 18 Korea too. I like the kind of craziness of it. And then Shikoku 1889, I've found that I really enjoy playing that one recently. So
yeah, the reprint's great.
Yeah. I think I finally got to play the reprint at Trax, actually, when we were up there in the spring. Finally got a game of that in.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Super cool production. Yeah, he did such a great job with that.
Yeah.
Certainly. Tony, what kind of questions do you have, sir?
Well,
I mean, my old interview chops are coming up, and I'll just run.
That was great. Keep going, pal. I want to hear more about Royal Gorge. Yeah,
right.
Kayla, you've been doing it for 3 years. 18XXY's Denman. Why jump into the design?
Yeah. It kind of started with this trip to the Railroad Museum in Golden. So
oh yeah, Colorado Railroad Museum.
We took a trip over to the Railroad Museum in Golden, Colorado, which is a great railroad. What are you looking at me like?
Because that's not when it started.
Okay. I stand.
Here we go.
I stand corrected. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, Tony, did you have the over-under at 5 minutes?
Yeah. I'll let her tell you how this game came to be.
Yeah, no, actually we were out on a walk and we were just kind of spitballing ideas and talking about different things. I think we had just visited the Royal Gorge and we're kind of talking about the train and how does that work. And Denman got this idea and he's like, we should totally design a game around that. Like we should design an 18XX game around the Royal Gorge. And
then we went.
And then we went back to the house and I started looking up some stuff because I'm a researcher. And so I found the train museum and now he can finish that story because then we ended up at the train museum.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't think they had to go 3 times until it was finally open, Tony, right?
No, we didn't open.
Oh, so you've been to it? Apparently,
no, we did the Forney. We did the Forney Museum, and we had to go 3 different times because we went multiple times and it was closed. I think on the 4th time it was finally open.
I mean, because you're mentioning it though, Chris. Have you guys been to the Forney Museum?
I don't think we have.
It's at I-70 in Brighton, and they have a big boy, and they have a whole bunch of train stuff in there. You got to go.
Oh,
wow, okay.
We
need to go.
It was very cool, very cool. But let's get back to Golden then.
Yeah. So I stand corrected. We were out for a walk, but then we went to Golden and we started digging into some of the research. And the other thing is that we were brought up in Fremont County. So we both went to high school at Florence High School in Fremont County. And so we were really close to that. I remember working in a coffee shop in my youth and people would come to town and be like, is there anything interesting to do? And I'd be like, not really. And they're like, isn't the Royal Gorge like the highest suspension bridge in the world? I was like, oh yeah, true. That is there. So, it was kind of in our backyard. Yeah, the Supermax prison.
We can tell you all about that.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. But we, we had it in our backyard and we didn't really, I don't think, know a whole lot about the history. Right. And that's what we started to kind of dig into was the history. Mm-hmm. And there's just a lot of really cool railroad history that happened in that area.
Awesome. So Tony, put that on the list for my next Colorado visit. We got to go check that out.
Oh yeah, man. The train is fun to ride. You can do a helicopter tour and walking across the bridge really freaks me out. So yeah, we can do that.
I agree on all 3 of those points.
The bridge is fun. I don't recommend the train at Christmas time unless you have kids. But otherwise, it's great.
Yeah. It was cool though.
Cool.
They decorated the interior for Christmas and stuff, but it was a lot of children, a lot of screaming children. So
yeah. As somebody who doesn't have children, I appreciate the heads up.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Tony, did you get a peek at the rule book and everything before we started to play?
I did. I got a link from these guys, I don't know, a month ago or something, about, hey, take a peek at the rule book. And I really thought it was excellent and has some things that I hadn't seen in other rule books in terms of presenting information. I really think that you guys spent a lot of time thinking about it and working on the layout, and just wondering if there's anything about the rule book you guys want to share.
Yeah, I think the first thing is our motivation was to make people understand that 18xx is not that difficult. It's not as difficult as people make it out to be. And we just wanted to simplify that.
Yeah. Our approach was really we really wanted to bring in. So when I think this is true for both of us, at least I don't want to speak on your behalf, but when I came into the 18xx world from Euros, it was always sort of this intimidating world. And it was it felt like there was a lot of rules overhead. They were longer games, that sort of thing. We hear this all the time about this space in the hobby. And we really wanted to draw in other Euro players, bring more players to 18xx, because this system is awesome and people aren't necessarily diving into it. So how do we do that? And one of the things that I think was a big hurdle, I know it was for me when I got into it, was this just wall of text rule book. And so we wanted to adopt that into the graphical rule book that is so common amongst Euro players, right? And so if you take a look at the rule book, and it's posted live now, I know, we let some people like Tony look at it ahead of time, but it's live on Board Game Geek now. And, it's intended to sort of walk players who have never played 18xx through this, what I would argue is a really simple system. There's definitely more complex games out there where when you get into the MacGuffins here, it's, there's more to be explored, and there's a little more rules overhead. But I mean, I think you guys would agree, right? The 18xx system is just really not that, it's not that difficult.
No, I think the 18xx system is it's one of those games that I think the core rule set is actually very simple. All the depth and complexity comes from the decision space that you're operating in at that time, right? So I think a lot of people see that and see all that complexity, but at the end of the day, it's actually a pretty simple system. Once you kind of get used to the few quirks like company money, your money, things like that, once you kind of get comfortable with those concepts, and I think as a whole, Eurogamers are so much better these days than they were 5-10 years ago with understanding a different concept like that, right? I think we've even seen it kind of bleed into a little bit of the board game space with things like, even back as far as Panamax was one of the first games to actually start treating company money separate and things like that. So I think, 18xx has also bled out into other things just as much as it's kind of absorbed a lot more out of the Eurogame world. But no, you're right. I think it's at its heart, it's a very simple set of rules. You don't have a ton of choices on your turn. It just, every choice matters. That's the crux.
And it helps that 18xx is such a procedural thing. It was easy to walk players through that. And I mean, I'm hopeful that rule book does what we intended for it to do. But yeah, I mean, I just compare that to comparing the 18xx system to the latest Lacerda game. I mean,
right.
So these Euro players are playing very heavy, very complex games.
More complex,
and they're totally interesting games. But man, when you get into the 18xx world, I've often said, and this is, I mean, maybe going too far in depth here, I don't eat up all of our time, but the people are into story games, and I'm like, if you're into story games like RPG stuff, try an 18xx, because we've had long discussions after an 18xx about all the minute little details that went down. And there's literally like a story. I mean, I remember certain 18xx games. I can tell you what happened because it was just so narrative throughout the process.
It's funny. I think one of the telltale signs of a really good game session in general is when you're cleaning up. What does that look like? Is it, you have a couple different ways. It's either we're resetting because we need to do that again, right? Like there's that. Yeah. There's the let's leave it set up for tomorrow. We're gonna tackle this. And then there's the you get so caught up in discussion talking about the game, you actually don't even break it down and start cleaning up. You're just kind of reliving key moments in the game. And I can't think of any games, period, that do it more than 18xx for me. Like 100%. I wind up with talkable moments, whether I win, whether I lose, because usually one of the directions is spectacular. So having that story at the end is absolutely key. I agree 100%. Yeah.
I think that you guys have set up a wonderful segue, right? Because beyond the rules, Desmond, Kayla, you both talked about like the history in your backyard that you weren't aware of then and everything. And telling a story, and you guys are, I feel like, trying to tell a bit of a historical story in your game. And it, if we can start talking about the game a little bit, it might begin with the private companies. I felt like from the play and the rules that I read that there was a lot of history wrapped up in the private companies. Maybe you guys can talk about the private companies to whatever degree. I don't mean like detail every one of them. Maybe you have a favorite, or how the history is brought through or something.
Right. Yeah, the privates, and there are a lot of privates in the game. So the play that we had the other day, I mean, you see 5 of them. And so the game always has 5 privates in the game. That's kind of there's these tranches in the game of 2 yellow, 2 green, 1 brown. So that's common throughout the rules. But there's 18 privates in total that come with the game, and only 5 will get selected. So there's a ton of replayability. But we did a ton of research. So that was kind of like in the research, we started to research all of the things that were going on in the area. When I say we did a bunch of research, I really mean Kayla did a ton of research.
He doesn't mean him at all.
Yeah.
I see. Yes.
I should let her talk about the research that went into the private assets.
Yeah. So I think I took the time frame of when the event happened and kind of looked at like what else was going on in Colorado at that time. Mm-hmm. And then how can we incorporate that into the game? And the best way to do that was to put it into the private companies. And so we have things like gold mines and a gold nugget that you can ship. And we have jewelers and we have prison labor and kind of prison workers, which could be a bit controversial, but I kind of like that one. But it's, true to history. And so we have that. We have Doc Holliday. He was, as I was reading, found out he was a hired hand by one of the companies as they were hiring gunslingers to fight back and forth over the rights to the Royal Gorge. And we thought that would be really cool to incorporate because people know who Doc Holliday is. And so that's really neat history. And so I don't think I have a favorite. I like that the history is in those cards.
Yeah. I think Doc Holliday is one of my favorite cards. I mean, Doc was so cool because when we talk about debt, we can talk about Doc Holliday again.
Oh yeah.
I think Doc Holliday is one of the coolest cards. We both grew up in Fremont County. And if you don't know about Fremont County, there's 20 something prisons in Fremont County.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So virtually everybody we knew, their parents worked in prisons, and we were surrounded by prisons all the time. You had sirens that went off in town when prisoners walked away.
Yeah, I remember we were at a homecoming game one year, and you hear the sirens that people got out at the Fed Max. And so they had to shut down everything and send you home. And I mean, most
you must have the cleanest roads of anybody in that county, right?
Yeah, surprisingly, I don't know that that's true.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true.
There's certainly no hitchhiking in Fremont County.
No, I definitely do not stop to pick anybody up.
Yeah, so the prison labor one is kind of cool. And the Florence oil fields, I mean, there's a lot of rich history down there, a lot of stuff that was going on.
I think the one we didn't mention was the ghost towns. I really like that too, because now you can go and you can
Tony got that last time.
Yeah, I had that one.
That's right. You have the ghost town.
Yeah,
and the St. Cloud Hotel was in your game.
Yes, St. Cloud.
Which you can drive by, so you can still see that hotel. It's just kind of in ruins. And so I like that aspect of them.
That is cool. So like when people come to tracks, if you want to take a field trip to Fremont County, like there are a lot of these private assets that you can go drive to them, and you could go check out, the actual physical location of these private assets. Doc Holliday's dead.
And he's buried at like Buena Vista or somewhere like that. I don't know.
Excellent.
Right on.
I think you guys have definitely made a very compelling game. To me, 18XX, I mean, we're what, 240 plus titles that are actually legit published. I'm sure there's another double that sitting in people's shelves somewhere. But it amazes me that we can still find new things, and we can still iterate, and we can still evolve the design as far as these have come. I really see how you handle the privates coming out of Korea. And I see how you kind of it gave us license to say we can have a lot of privates. We just have to handle them a little differently. We don't need just 6. We can do more. And I absolutely love that. And I think I'm excited because I think it's a great game. And I hope other people see that there's still a lot of unique things happening. We don't just have to retread what has come before over and over and over and over.
Hey, I'm glad you brought up Korea, because I distinctly remember the conversations about our privates, and that's a weird sentence, but anyway, the privates in Korea, we were on the heels of Korea, and we had been playing it a lot, and we really wanted to do what Korea did and just put these ridiculously broken abilities into the game. Because, the Korea assets are just absurd. It's like, get $100. You're like, what?
Did I read that right? Hold on.
I mean, we had to rules check so many of those, that can't be right. And then you look it up and you're like, that's right.
You were in the game that I just destroyed everybody because of the way my private companies worked. It was just... I doubled the nearest score. It was insane.
Yeah, it was so brutal. But that's something about Korea is I think maybe some players might be turned off by the fact that a flop can come out in such a way that maybe the game's wrote. I still have a great time playing it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So anyway, spoiler, our privates didn't end up being that broken.
No.
I mean, they're cool. They're interesting, but yeah, we didn't.
Yeah, I think it was. I was going to ask you to clarify.
Yeah,
I didn't think they were goofy. So.
Yeah, 18 Korea is if Carl Chuduk designed an 18XX game.
No, then you'd have to turn the privates on different sides to do different things.
That's true. Yeah, there would be something about splaying. Right.
Exactly. All right. So what we're going to do is if you're listening on the podcast, you're not going to notice anything. But if you're watching on the video, we're going to kind of pause right here because it's been really fun getting to talk to Demon and Kayla about the design process of the game. We're going to kick it over to the next video where we're actually going to dive deep and cut through the phases of 18 Royal Gorge. And we're going to give you our impressions, our playthrough that we just had and everything. And we'll actually talk about the game specifically. So be sure to jump to that. Link will be in the description. So don't hesitate to do that. And if you're listening, well, you might not even hear this because I might not put it in there. We'll see. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. This Week and Each Week is brought to you by Game Toppers. Upgrade your gaming experience at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you next time.